What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into something absolutely wild. Something that's been taking the theatre world by storm and fundamentally changing how we understand the Stranger Things universe. I'm talking about Stranger Things. The First Shadow, the official stage play that's been dominating London's West End and Broadway since its premiere. And here's the thing, this isn't just some cash grab theatre adaptation thrown together to capitalise on the show's popularity. This is fully canonical, created by the Duffer Brothers themselves, and it holds crucial keys to understanding Season 5 and the entire mythology of the series. Now, I know most of you can't drop hundreds of dollars on Broadway tickets or fly to London to catch a West End show, so I'm breaking down the entire story for you in exhaustive detail. Every plot point, every character arc, every emotional beat, every connection to the show, and why this changes everything you thought you knew about Vecna, the Mind Flayer, and the origins of the entire Stranger Things saga. By the end of this video, you'll understand how young Henry Creel became the monster we know, and trust me, it's way more tragic and complicated than you think. This is a story about a boy who wanted desperately to be good, who fought against darkness with everything he had, and who ultimately lost that battle in the most heartbreaking way possible. If you're enjoying this breakdown, go ahead and smash that subscribe button, because we've got tons of Stranger Things Season 5 content coming your way. We'll be covering every episode, every theory, every connection, as the final season unfolds. Alright, settle in, get comfortable, maybe grab a drink or a snack, because this is going to be a comprehensive journey. Let's get into it. So first, let's talk about what this play actually is and why it matters so much to the larger Stranger Things story. The First Shadow premiered at the Phoenix Theatre in London's West End on December 14th, 2023, and it absolutely dominated. The critical reception was phenomenal, audiences were blown away, and it ended up winning 2 Olivier Awards, including Best Entertainment, which is a massive achievement for a play based on a streaming series. Then it transferred to Broadway, opening at the Marquis Theatre on April 22nd, 2025, and it's been running to packed houses ever since. Both productions have been theatrical events in the truest sense of the word. The play was written by Kate Treffry, who's been a writer on Stranger Things since the very beginning. She knows these characters, she knows this world, and she worked directly with the Duffer Brothers to craft this story. In fact, the story itself was created by Matt and Ross Duffer, the masterminds behind the entire Stranger Things universe. This was developed alongside Season 5, with both projects informing each other as they went along. The Duffers have been very clear that The First Shadow and Season 5 were created in tandem, each one enriching the other. Here's what makes this huge, and I cannot stress this enough. The Duffers have explicitly said that The First Shadow contains keys to understanding the ending of Stranger Things. In interviews, they've said it's meant to take you back to the beginning of the story and may help you understand the end. That's not marketing speak. That's not hyperbole. After seeing what's in Season 5 Volume 1, which dropped in November 2025, it's clear they weren't exaggerating. Even a little bit. The connections are there, the references are there, and if you know The First Shadow, certain moments in Season 5 hit with devastating emotional weight. Now, you don't need to see the play to understand Season 5. The Duffers have confirmed that multiple times, because they know not everyone can afford a trip to London or New York, or shell out what can be hundreds of pounds or dollars for tickets. The show will explain everything you need to know, but if you do know the play's story, if you understand what happened in 1959, Hawkins Season 5 hits differently. There are references in Episode 4 where Max finds herself in 1959 Hawkins High School, and if you know The First Shadow, that moment becomes so much more meaningful. The Nevada cave that appears in Season 5 where Vecna is afraid to enter, that's directly from the play. Project Rainbow, which gets mentioned as this mysterious government experiment, same thing. All of it traces back to The First Shadow. Netflix even released a documentary called Behind the Curtain, Stranger Things, The First Shadow, back in April 2025. It shows the whole creation process, the rehearsals, the technical wizardry involved in staging some absolutely bonkers visual effects on a theatre stage. If you can't see the play itself, that documentary is probably the next best thing because you get a real sense of the scale and ambition of what they pulled off. Seeing how they created the Upside Down on stage, how they made a Demogorgon appear, how they showed Henry's powers in a live theatrical setting, it's genuinely impressive. The play takes place in 1959, which is 24 years before Will Byers vanishes in the very first episode of Stranger Things. We're in late 50s Hawkins, and it's a very different town than the one we know. This is post-war America, that veneer of normalcy covering up loads of trauma and secrets. Everyone's supposed to be fine, but no one actually is. We get teenage versions of Joyce, Hopper, and Bob, navigating high school drama, first loves, and teenage angst while something deeply wrong starts happening around them. And at the centre of it all is Henry Creel, the boy who will eventually become Vecna, the monster who terrorises Hawkins in the 1980s. This isn't just backstory for backstory's sake. It actually reframes how we understand the entire series. Questions about the Mind Flayer, about where it came from and what it wants, about Brenner's experiments, and why he was so obsessed with finding psychic children, about why Hawkins specifically became ground zero for all this horror. They all get answered here. The play shows you the moment when everything went wrong, the exact point where darkness entered this small Indiana town and never left. And more importantly, it shows you that things could have gone differently. Henry Creel didn't have to become Vecna. There were moments where he could have been saved, where different choices could have led to different outcomes. That's what makes this story so tragic. There's also been talk of this being the first in a trilogy of Stranger Things stage plays, which is incredibly ambitious. Whether that happens depends on how Season 5 wraps up, what stories are left to tell, and what the appetite is for more theatrical expansions of this world. But for now, the first shadow stands as this really fascinating, essential piece of the Stranger Things puzzle. Now that we know what we're dealing with, let's talk about when and where this story actually unfolds, because the play has a really clever structure. It opens with a prologue, set in 1943, right in the middle of World War II. We're on the USS Eldridge, a Navy destroyer escort that's part of a secret military experiment. The goal, as explained to the crew, was to use some kind of experimental force field technology to make the ship invisible to enemy detection. This is very science fiction stuff for the 1940s, the kind of thing that sounds impossible, but that the military was genuinely experimenting with during wartime. But instead of just turning invisible, instead of achieving what they thought was going to be a breakthrough in naval warfare, the ship gets transported to another dimension entirely. Dimension X, as it's later called in the play and in Stranger Things lore. The transition is violent and catastrophic. One moment the ship is in Philadelphia Harbour, the next it's in this hellish otherworld, filled with creatures and darkness. Most of the crew are killed almost immediately by these horrific humanoid creatures that attack the ship. It's chaos, it's terror, and it's over in minutes. But one man survives and makes it back. That man is Captain Brenner, the father of Martin Brenner, the Dr. Brenner we know from the Stranger Things series. This prologue is really brief, maybe 5 minutes of stage time, but it sets up absolutely everything. Captain Brenner comes back from Dimension X with significant injuries, physically broken, and with this unique blood type that becomes important later in the story. He's never the same after that experience. How could he be? He's seen another world, been to a place that shouldn't exist, witnessed things that defy every law of physics and reality he thought he understood. On his deathbed years later, Captain Brenner tells his son Martin everything about what happened. About the experiment, about the portal that opened, about the creatures on the other side, about the world of darkness and nightmares he barely escaped from. He tells Martin that there's another dimension out there, that it's real, that it's reachable, and that obsession gets passed down from father to son like a curse. Young Martin Brenner grows up knowing there's another world out there, and he becomes absolutely determined to find a way back to it. Not to close it, not to seal it off, but to access it, to control it, to harness whatever power exists on the other side. This is the foundation of everything Brenner does in the Stranger Things series. His entire career, his life's work, his willingness to experiment on children. It all traces back to his father's deathbed confession. He's trying to recreate what happened on the USS Eldridge, to open that portal deliberately and control it this time. Then we jump forward to October 1959, Hawkins, Indiana. It's picture day at Hawkins High School, which is the perfect narrative device to introduce basically everyone we need to meet. Picture day is this very American high school tradition, this moment frozen in time, and the play uses it brilliantly to show us who these people are. Before everything goes wrong, we meet teenage Joyce Maldonado, and she's so completely different from the Joyce Byers we know from the series. This Joyce is peppy, optimistic, maybe even a bit annoying in how aggressively enthusiastic she is about everything. She's full of energy and dreams and plans. She talks fast, moves fast, has about 17 different projects going at once. She wants to direct plays, she wants to make art, she wants to get a scholarship to a college in Indianapolis so she can finally escape this small town that feels like it's suffocating her. Not New York, not Los Angeles, Indianapolis. That's how desperate she is to get out of Hawkins, that even Indianapolis, just a couple hours away, seems like this big dream destination. She's already dating Lonnie Byers, and the play doesn't shy away from showing us exactly why that's a terrible idea. He's dismissive of her ambitions, makes fun of her passion for theatre, treats her like she's being overly dramatic when she gets excited about things. He's controlling in these subtle ways, always putting her down while pretending he's just being realistic or looking out for her, but Joyce doesn't see it yet. She's 17, she thinks his rough edges are interesting, thinks she can handle him, thinks maybe she can even change him. We know how that turns out. We know she ends up married to him, has 2 kids with him, and spends years in a relationship that drains her before she finally gets out. What's lovely about watching this younger Joyce is seeing where her strength comes from. She's directing the school play, and originally she wanted to do Oklahoma, which is very safe and traditional and what the school board would approve without question. But she scraps it at the last minute in favour of Dark of the Moon, this much darker, weirder, more emotionally complex story about a witch boy from the mountains who falls in love with a human girl. To be with her, he has to give up his powers and become mortal, but the witch community won't let him go, and tragedy follows. It's moody and dark, and exactly the kind of thing a teenage Joyce would be obsessed with. When she's given pushback, when Principal Newbie and other authority figures question her choice, she fights for it with everything she has. She makes her case, she stands her ground, she refuses to back down. You can see the seeds of the Joyce who will tear apart dimensions to find her son. That fierce, protective, absolutely unshakable energy is already there, just aimed at her art instead of her family. She's a fighter, always has been, and watching her in 1959 makes you love her character even more. Jim Hopper is 18 and absolutely miserable. His car won't start, which becomes this running joke throughout the play, but also this symbol of everything he's feeling. He's constantly trying to fix it, constantly under the hood with his tools, because that car represents freedom. It represents getting out of Hawkins, leaving his father behind, starting a life somewhere else. But it won't cooperate, keeps breaking down, keeps trapping him here. Chief Hopper, Jim's dad, is this looming presence of expectation and disappointment throughout the play. He's the chief of police, a veteran who fought in World War II and came back with trauma he refuses to acknowledge or deal with. He expects his son to be disciplined and responsible, to follow in his footsteps, to be this perfect young man who makes him proud. And Jim doesn't want any of that. He doesn't want to be a cop, doesn't want to stay in Hawkins, doesn't want to live up to these impossible standards his father has set. There's this tension between them that runs through the entire play, this sense that they love each other but have no idea how to communicate. Chief Hopper is trying to prepare his son for a harsh world, trying to toughen him up, but all he's doing is pushing him away. And Jim is trying to figure out who he is, separate from his father's expectations, trying to carve out his own identity. It's painful to watch because we know Jim eventually does become a cop, does follow in his father's footsteps in a way, but only after going to Vietnam, losing his daughter, losing his wife, hitting rock bottom. The seeds of all that tragedy are visible here in 1959. There's this lovely dynamic between Hopper and Bob that mirrors Steve and Dustin in the main series. They're friends in this sweet, uncomplicated way. Hopper is the cooler one, the one who takes risks and breaks rules and gets into trouble, Bob is the nerdy guy who builds gadgets and gets excited about radio frequencies and electromagnetic interference patterns. But there's genuine affection there, real friendship. When they team up to investigate the animal deaths, you can see how well they work together, how they complement each other. Hopper provides the courage and the willingness to break rules. Bob provides the technical knowledge and the careful planning. The love triangle situation is handled really gently. Hopper clearly likes Joyce, and Joyce clearly likes him back, but neither of them will admit it. They're both too proud, too scared, too caught up in their own stuff. They flirt through insults and arguments, that very classic, "I'm mean to you because I like you" teenage dynamic. Anyone who's watched the main series will find this very familiar. It's the same energy they have as adults, that push and pull, that obvious attraction neither will acknowledge. Bob, meanwhile, is desperately in love with Joyce and absolutely terrible at hiding it. He does everything he can to impress her. He builds her devices to help with her play. He helps with the technical aspects of the production. He's always there when she needs something, always supportive, always kind. And she just sees him as a sweet friend, this nice guy who's helpful but not romantically interesting. It's painful to watch because we know Bob eventually does get his chance with Joyce in season 2 of the series. We know they have this lovely, gentle relationship before he's killed by demodogs trying to save everyone. But it's also clear that in 1959 this isn't his time. Joyce isn't ready to see him that way yet. Bob's real contribution to the story, beyond the emotional dynamics, is his technical brilliance. He builds this mobile radiolocation device that can track interference patterns and electromagnetic anomalies. It's cobbled together from spare parts, vacuum tubes and wires, and components he's scavenged from old radios and televisions. It shouldn't work as well as it does, but Bob is genuinely gifted at this stuff. He's got this intuitive understanding of electronics and signal processing that's way ahead of its time. When pets start dying around Hawkins in these really strange, inexplicable ways, Bob notices that each death corresponds with radio interference. His broadcasts get disrupted at specific times. There are these weird electromagnetic spikes, and he starts mapping the patterns. He photographs the crime scenes, documents everything with scientific precision, treats it like a proper investigation. This is Bob being Bob, using his brain and his technical skills to try to understand something that doesn't make sense. Joyce joins the investigation because she's curious, and because several of the victims are kids in her play, students whose families have been affected by these deaths. Hopper gets pulled in partly to help his friends, and partly because being around Joyce and Bob is more interesting than dealing with his father's disappointment. The three of them become this little detective trio, sneaking around Hawkins after dark, following Bob's device to wherever the signals are strongest, trying to solve what they think is a serial pet killer case. The animal deaths are genuinely disturbing, played for real horror. Claudia Henderson's cat, Prancer, is found mutilated in a way that doesn't make sense for any normal predator. Someone's dog is killed and left in a really horrible state. A bird is found with its wings torn off. Each victim belongs to someone involved in Joyce's production of Dark of the Moon, which creates this pattern that the trio latches onto. They're convinced there's a human killer, someone who's targeting the play for some reason, maybe someone who's got a grudge against Joyce or against one of the students. The idea that it might be something supernatural, that one of their classmates might be responsible, that they're dealing with genuine psychic powers, never even crosses their minds. Why would it? It's 1959. They're teenagers in small-town Indiana. The most exotic thing they've encountered is Bob's homemade radio equipment. They're operating within a framework of reality that doesn't include monsters or psychic abilities or interdimensional creatures. There's this brilliant scene where Bob installs Christmas lights in his tracking device, using them to indicate signal strength, different colours for different levels of electromagnetic activity. It's such a clear, beautiful callback to season 1, where Joyce uses Christmas lights to communicate with Will in the Upside Down. The play is full of those little moments where you see the origins of things that become important later, little echoes and parallels that reward viewers who know the series. The investigation eventually leads them to the Creel house. Bob's device is going absolutely mad with interference when they get near the property. the lights flashing like crazy, the readings off the charts. The three of them sneak onto the property one night to investigate, trying to be quiet, trying not to get caught. They're downstairs, trying to figure out what could be causing all this electromagnetic activity, when the incident with Principal Newbie happens upstairs. They hear the commotion, hear the screams, and when they rush up to see what's happening, they find Newbie blinded and bleeding on the floor, his eyes destroyed in this horrific way. Henry and Patty are there, both of them in shock, both of them covered in Newbie's blood. Victor Creel comes running in from another room where he'd been sleeping, trying to figure out what's happened, trying to help. In that moment of chaos and terror, Joyce, Bob, and Hopper make a decision that changes everything. They run. They flee the house in a panic and immediately go to the police with their theory. They tell Chief Hopper that Victor Creel, this weird veteran who just moved to town, who everyone thinks is strange, is the killer. He's been murdering animals as practice, experimenting, and now he's escalated to attacking people. It makes sense based on what they saw. Victor was there, covered in blood from trying to help his injured neighbour. Henry looked traumatised because he just witnessed his father's violence. Or so they think. They don't know they've just set up an innocent man to take the fall for his son's crimes. They don't know that their investigation, their desire to solve this mystery and be heroes, their good intentions, are going to contribute to one of the great tragedies in Hawkins' history. It's heartbreaking, because they're just kids trying to do the right thing. They're trying to help. They're trying to protect people, and they end up destroying an innocent man's life. The chemistry between the three of them really sells the idea that these are the same people who become the adults we know. You can see future Joyce in the way this girl fights for what matters to her, in her stubborn refusal to let things go. You can see future Hopper in the way this boy can't stand injustice even when it's easier to look away, in his protective instincts. And you can see future Bob in the way this kid just wants to help the people he loves, even if they don't love him back the same way, even if he never gets the recognition he deserves. But let's talk about the boy himself, the one who changes everything, the tragic centre of this entire story. Henry Creel in this play is honestly heartbreaking. That's the word that keeps coming up when people talk about the performance, when critics write about it, when audiences discuss it afterwards. This isn't the cold, calculating monster we meet in Season 4 of Stranger Things. This isn't Vecna, the villain, the nightmare creature who kills teenagers through their trauma. This is a terrified teenager who knows something is deeply fundamentally wrong with him but has no idea how to fix it, no idea what's happening, and no one he can turn to for help. From the moment Henry appears on stage, you can see he's struggling. He's shy, awkward in his body, like he doesn't quite fit in his own skin. He's desperate to make friends, to be normal, to fit in at this new school, but he's fundamentally convinced that he's dangerous, that something inside him is broken and wrong. And the worst part, the real tragedy, is that he's right. He is dangerous, not because he wants to be, not because there's something morally wrong with him, but because he has these abilities he can't control. He has these remarkable psychokinetic abilities, the power to move things with his mind, to reach into other dimensions, to see things across vast distances that shouldn't be possible. He can enter people's minds, sense their fears, touch their consciousness. These are incredible, impossible powers, the kind of thing that in another story might make him a superhero, but he didn't ask for any of it, and he certainly doesn't want it. Every time his powers manifest, every time something happens that he can't explain, it terrifies him. He just wants to be a normal teenage boy, to go to school and make friends and maybe hold hands with a girl he likes. But he can't have that because of what he is. The play introduces this concept of the battlefield, which is what Henry calls the void, when he enters it. It's his name for that dark dimension we see in Stranger Things, that black space with floating particles where Eleven goes when she uses her powers. But for Henry, it's not a safe space, it's not a tool he controls. It's this red-lit, laser-filled dimension where a shadowy presence waits for him, watches him, hunts him. Going there is terrifying, not empowering. Throughout the play, we see Henry slip into the battlefield, sometimes voluntarily when he's trying to use his powers deliberately, sometimes involuntarily, when his emotions overwhelm him or when he's asleep. When he's there, when he's in that space, His voice changes in this really disturbing way. It deepens, takes on this distorted, echoing quality that anyone who's watched season 4 will recognise immediately as Vecna's voice. It's the same processing, the same effect, but here you understand that it's not Henry's voice, it's something speaking through him, something using his body and his powers for its own purposes. But here's the thing, here's what makes this character so compelling and so tragic. Henry fights it. He fights this presence with everything he has. He's terrified of it, terrified of what it wants from him, terrified of what it's making him do. This isn't a willing partnership. This isn't Henry embracing darkness and choosing to become a monster. This is a teenage boy being possessed, being controlled, being used by something far more powerful than himself, and fighting desperately to maintain some scrap of his own identity and will. This is probably one of the biggest revelations of the play, one of the things that reframes everything. We thought we knew about Vecna and the Mind Flayer. Henry didn't create the Mind Flayer like we might have assumed from season 4 of the show. The way that season presented it, with the flashback to Henry in Dimension X, seemingly shaping the Mind Flayer into existence, implied that he was the source, that he created this entity. But the first shadow makes it clear that's not what happened at all. The Mind Flayer found Henry first when he was just a little kid playing in a cave in Nevada. It's been inside him, or connected to him, or controlling him ever since that moment. The Mind Flayer is the original entity, the true villain, and Henry is its victim and its weapon. The play makes it really clear that there's Henry, the boy who wants to be normal and good, who dreams of having friends and falling in love and maybe leaving Hawkins one day to see the world. And then there's the darkness that takes over, when he's weak or scared or angry, when his defences are down. It's almost like a possession, like two personalities fighting for control of the same body. When Henry is himself, he's gentle and kind and deeply frightened. When the Mind Flayer takes over, he becomes something else entirely, something cold and cruel and monstrous. We see this most clearly in the animal killings, which are presented as genuine horror sequences. Claudia Henderson's cat, Prancer, is the first one we witness in real time. Henry doesn't mean to do it. He's lying in bed one night, half asleep, in that vulnerable state between waking and dreaming. His consciousness slips into the battlefield without him intending it to. One moment, he's in his bedroom in the Creel house. The next, he's in that red-lit dimension with the presence watching him, pushing him, using him. The Mind Flayer shows him the cat. Henry can see it somehow, sense it, even though it's nowhere near him physically. And suddenly, without meaning to, without even being fully aware of what he's doing, Henry's lifting the cat with his mind. It's floating in the air in someone's yard or house, somewhere in Hawkins. And then he's crushing it, breaking its bones, killing it. The cat dies, terrified and in pain. And Henry is doing it, his powers are doing it, but he's not in control. When he wakes up in his bed, he's covered in sweat, shaking and crying. He thinks it was just a nightmare, just another bad dream in a life full of them. He has no idea, doesn't understand yet, that he's actually done it, that somewhere in Hawkins a family is waking up to find their pet dead in a way that makes no sense. He has no idea he's killing things in his sleep, that the nightmares are real. It's not until the news spreads around school the next day that Henry starts to understand. He hears students talking about Claudia's cat, about how it was found, about the state of the body. And you can see the horror dawning on his face, the realization that his nightmare might not have been a nightmare at all. He starts to understand that he's killing things and doesn't even know he's doing it, can't control it, can't stop it. There's this scene in a school bathroom that's genuinely disturbing, played as pure horror. Henry is alone, trying to wash his face, trying to calm down after hearing about another death. He looks up into the mirror, and he has a vision. He sees Patty, the girl he's starting to care about, but she's not really Patty. She's a puppet of the shadow, this twisted, distorted version of the girl he likes. Her face is wrong. Her movements are wrong. Everything about her is wrong. Puppet Patty taunts him. She tells him about the future killings he'll commit, about all the people he's going to hurt. She urges him to embrace it, to hurt people deliberately, to peel them open and see what they're like inside. Her voice is this mix of the Mind Flayer's distorted tone and Patty's normal voice, and it's genuinely creepy. She's describing these horrible acts of violence in this sweet, encouraging way, like she's trying to help him, trying to show him what he's meant to be. Henry is absolutely terrified. He's backing away from the mirror, begging this vision to leave him alone, tears streaming down his face. He doesn't want this. He doesn't want to hurt anyone. He just wants to be normal, to be good, to be the kind of person Patty could care about. But the vision keeps pushing, keeps taunting, keeps showing him these horrible images of what he's going to become. He begs the presence to leave him alone. He's literally on his knees in this bathroom, having a breakdown, pleading with something invisible to stop torturing him. And then the vision ends, snaps off suddenly, and he's alone in the bathroom with just his reflection, just himself, shaking and scared, and so alone. His relationship with his family is complicated, layered with all kinds of trauma and misunderstanding. Victor, his father, wants desperately to believe everything is fine, that the move to Hawkins has fixed their problems, that they can be a normal family now. He's a veteran, probably dealing with his own trauma from World War II, and he's chosen denial as his coping mechanism. He loves Henry, you can absolutely tell that he does, but he can't face what his son actually is. He can't acknowledge the powers, can't admit that something genuinely supernatural is happening. So he explains everything away, makes excuses, tells himself and everyone else that Henry is just troubled, just going through a phase, just needs time to adjust. It's tragic, because Victor's denial is a form of abandonment. Henry needs his father to believe him, to acknowledge what's happening, to help him. But Victor can't do that. His worldview, his understanding of reality, can't accommodate what Henry is. So he fails his son in the most fundamental way, not through malice, but through an inability to see the truth that's right in front of him. Virginia, Henry's mother, is different. She's watchful, anxious, always observing Henry with these worried eyes. She knows something is wrong, can sense it the way mothers do. And as we find out later in the play, she's got her own significant trauma that makes her hypersensitive to danger and darkness. Her father was abusive, one of those cruel men who used fear as a tool of control. He used to lock her in closets full of spiders as punishment when she was a little girl. Leave her there in the dark for hours while she screamed and begged to be let out. That terror has never left her. She's afraid of spiders still, has nightmares about them, can't stand to be in enclosed spaces. And Henry can sense it. He can feel his mother's fear, can see it in her mind when he's in the battlefield. Later in the play, in one of the most disturbing scenes, he weaponizes that fear against her. When he finds out she's been betraying him to Brenner, when he discovers she's been giving away his secrets, he traps her in her own worst nightmare. He makes her relive those childhood traumas, fills her room with spiders, locks her in her own mind the way her father locked her in closets, and he kills her that way. Through her fear, through her trauma. It's a horrible scene, one of the darkest moments in the entire play, because you can see that part of Henry knows this is wrong, knows he shouldn't be doing this, but the mind flayer is in control, feeding on Virginia's terror, using Henry's powers to cause maximum suffering, and Henry, in his pain and anger at her betrayal, lets it happen. He doesn't fight as hard as he could. He allows the darkness to win. Alice, his little sister, is just trying to have a normal family. She's young, maybe 9 or 10 years old, and she loves her brother completely and unconditionally. She looks up to Henry, thinks he's the coolest, wants to spend time with him. She doesn't understand why everyone is so tense all the time, why her mother is always anxious, why her father is always making excuses, why Henry seems so sad. She just wants things to be okay, wants her family to be happy. The tragedy of Alice is that she's completely innocent. She hasn't done anything wrong, hasn't hurt anyone, doesn't deserve what happens to her. When Henry kills her, it's almost merciful compared to what he does to Virginia. It's quick, but it's still the murder of a child, his own sister, someone who loved him. And it's one of the things that seals his fate, that makes it impossible for him to ever come back from what he's become. What makes Henry so compelling in this play, what makes audiences cry for him even as they watch him do terrible things, is that he genuinely wants to be good. When he meets Patty and she doesn't run away from him, when she actually listens to him and believes him when he says his powers scare him, you can see how desperate he is for that connection. He's been so alone, so isolated, so convinced that he's a monster. And then this girl, this brave, kind, brilliant girl, tells him he's not a monster, tells him his powers don't define him, tells him he can choose to be good. He creates this beautiful vision for her once, using his abilities deliberately for something positive. He takes her consciousness into this imagining, where she's on stage, singing her heart out, and everyone in the audience is cheering for her. It's beautiful and hopeful, and exactly what she needs to see. He's showing her what she could be, what she deserves, using his powers to give her this gift of confidence and possibility. And it's the most hopeful moment in the entire play, because you see that Henry's powers aren't inherently evil. They're a tool, and he can use them for good, for kindness, for love. In that moment, you start to think maybe he can be saved. Maybe Patty's love and belief will be enough. Maybe he can learn to control the darkness, to use his abilities to help people instead of hurt them. But there's this constant undercurrent of dread, because we know how this ends. We've seen season 4 of Stranger Things. We know Henry becomes Vecna. We know he murders his mother and sister in 1959. We know he eventually embraces the darkness and becomes one of the most terrifying villains in the entire series. Watching him struggle against that fate, watching him try so hard to be normal, watching him fail inch by inch, makes it all the more tragic. The Nevada incident haunts him throughout the play. It's referenced multiple times, this defining trauma from his early childhood. Before the Creels moved to Hawkins, they were living in Rachel, Nevada, near these caves in the desert. Henry was just a little kid, maybe 6 or 7 years old, and he loved exploring. He had this toy spyglass, this little telescope thing, and he'd go out into the desert. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into something absolutely wild. Something that's been taking the theatre world by storm and fundamentally changing how we understand the Stranger Things universe. I'm talking about Stranger Things. The First Shadow, the official stage play that's been dominating London's West End and Broadway. And here's the thing, this isn't just some cash grabs theatre adaptation thrown together to capitalise on the show's popularity. This is fully canonical, created by the Duffer Brothers themselves, and it holds crucial keys to understanding Season 5. Now, I know most of you can't drop hundreds of dollars on Broadway tickets or fly to London to catch a West End show, so I'm breaking down the entire story for you in exhaustive detail. Every plot point, every character arc, every connection to the show, and why this changes everything you thought you knew about Vecna, the Mind Flayer, and the origins of the entire Stranger Things saga. By the end of this video, you'll understand how young Henry Creel became the monster we know, and trust me, it's way more tragic and complicated than you think. This is a story about a boy who wanted desperately to be good, who fought against darkness with everything he had, and who ultimately lost that battle in the most heartbreaking way possible. If you're enjoying this breakdown, go ahead and smash that subscribe button, because we've got tons of Stranger Things Season 5 content coming your way. We'll be covering every episode, every theory, every connection, as the final season unfolds. Alright, settle in, get comfortable, because this is going to be a long one. Let's get into it. So first, let's talk about what this play actually is. The First Shadow premiered in London's West End in December 2023, then transferred to Broadway in April 2025. It was written by Kate Treffry, who's been a writer on Stranger Things since the beginning, with the story created directly by the Duffer Brothers. This was developed alongside Season 5, with both projects informing each other. The play won 2 Olivier Awards and the critical reception has been incredible. Here's what makes this huge. The Duffers have explicitly said that The First Shadow contains keys to understanding the ending of Stranger Things. They've said it takes you back to the beginning and may help you understand the end. After seeing what's in Season 5, Volume 1, they weren't exaggerating. You don't need to see the play to understand Season 5, but if you know the story, certain moments hit completely different. When Max finds herself in 1959 Hawkins High School in Episode 4, if you know The First Shadow, that scene becomes devastatingly meaningful. The play takes place in 1959, which is 24 years before Will Byers vanishes. We're in late 50s Hawkins, and we get teenage versions of Joyce, Hopper, and Bob navigating high school while something deeply wrong starts happening around them. At the centre of it all is Henry Creel, the boy who will eventually become Vecna. This isn't just backstory, it actually reframes how we understand the entire series. Questions about the Mind Flayer, about Brenner's experiments, about why Hawkins became ground zero for all this horror, they all get answered here. The play opens with a prologue, set in 1943, right in the middle of World War II. We're on the USS Eldridge, a Navy destroyer that's part of a secret military experiment. The goal was to use force field technology to make the ship invisible to enemy detection. Instead of turning invisible, the ship gets transported to another dimension entirely. Dimension X. Most of the crew are killed by horrific humanoid creatures, but one man survives and makes it back. That man is Brenner's father. This 5-minute prologue sets up everything. Brenner's dad comes back from Dimension X with significant injuries and a unique blood type. On his deathbed years later, he tells his son Martin everything about the portal, about the creatures, and that obsession gets passed down. Young Martin Brenner grows up knowing there's another world out there, and he becomes determined to find a way back to it. Then we jump to October 1959, Hawkins, Indiana. It's picture day at Hawkins High School, which is the perfect way to introduce everyone. We meet teenage Joyce Maldonado, and she's completely different from the Joyce we know. She's peppy, ambitious, full of energy and dreams. She wants to direct plays and get a scholarship to a college in Indianapolis so she can finally escape this small town. She's already dating Lonnie Byers, who's exactly as awful as you'd expect. Jim Hopper is there, but he's not the police chief we know. He's this angsty 18-year-old with a car that won't start and a really tense relationship with his father, Chief Hopper. There's loads of post-war trauma happening with the dads in this play. Hopper's father fought in the war, came back different, and now he expects his son to be this perfect, disciplined young man. Jim just wants to fix up his car and get out of Hawkins. Bob Newbie is the sweetest kid you've ever seen. He's running his own radio show from the school, broadcasting to the local area, and absolutely no one takes him seriously. He's hopelessly in love with Joyce, but she barely knows he exists beyond thinking he's a nice guy. Bob's father is the school principal, which makes him even more of a target for being uncool. Then there's Patty Newbie, Bob's adoptive sister. She's new to the story, doesn't appear in the Netflix series at all. Patty is this brilliant, tough girl who loves comic books and feels like an outsider everywhere she goes. Her father, Principal Newbie, resents her and she knows it. She's searching for something, some sense of belonging. During picture day, we also get glimpses of future parents. Ted Wheeler and Karen Childress are already a couple, very wholesome and boring. Charles Sinclair and Sue Anderson are there. Claudia Yost, who will become Claudia Henderson, is fussing over her things. Even Al Munson, Eddie's future dad, makes an appearance. It's this clever way of showing us that Hawkins has always been this interconnected place where everyone's lives are tangled together. Then the Creel family arrives. Victor, Virginia, Henry, and little Alice. They've just moved from Nevada, trying to start fresh after what the play calls the incident. Something happened out there involving Henry and another boy who ended up seriously hurt. The family inherited money from a late uncle, so they've got this big house now, the Creel house that we know from season 4. Victor is trying to be optimistic, to believe this move will fix everything. Virginia is anxious, protective, watching Henry like she's waiting for something bad to happen. Alice is just a kid, innocent and sweet, not understanding why her family's so tense. Henry walks into Hawkins High for the first time, and immediately everyone can tell something's off about him. He's pale, tightly wound, and there are already rumours about what he did in Nevada. When a bully confronts him during picture day, the lights flicker, a camera flash explodes. It's subtle, but it's there. Henry has powers, and he can't always control them. Let's talk about Henry himself, because this is honestly heartbreaking. This isn't the cold, calculating monster we meet in season 4. This is a terrified teenager who knows something is deeply wrong with him but has no idea how to fix it. From the moment Henry appears, you can see he's struggling. He's shy, awkward, desperate to make friends. but fundamentally convinced that he's dangerous. And the worst part is, he's right. He has these telekinetic abilities, the power to move things with his mind, to reach into other dimensions, to see things that shouldn't be possible. But he didn't ask for any of it, and he certainly doesn't want it. The play introduces this concept of the battlefield, which is what Henry calls the void when he enters it. It's not a safe space, it's this red-lit, laser-filled dimension where a shadowy presence waits for him. Throughout the play, we see Henry slip into the battlefield, sometimes voluntarily, sometimes not. When he's there, his voice changes, deepens, takes on this distorted quality that anyone who's watched season 4 will recognise immediately as Vecna's voice. But here's the thing, Henry fights it. He's terrified of this presence, this thing that wants to use him. This is probably one of the biggest revelations of the play. Henry didn't create the Mind Flayer, like we might have assumed from the show. The Mind Flayer found him first when he was just a little kid playing in a cave in Nevada. It's been inside him, or connected to him, or controlling him ever since. The play makes it clear there's Henry, the boy who wants to be normal and good, and then there's the darkness that takes over when he's weak or scared or angry. We see this most clearly in the animal killings. Claudia Henderson's cat, Prancer, is the first one we witness. Henry doesn't mean to do it. He's lying in bed, half asleep, and his consciousness slips into the battlefield. The Mind Flayer shows him the cat, and suddenly Henry's lifting it with his mind, crushing it, killing it. When he wakes up, he thinks it was just a nightmare. He has no idea he's actually done it until the news spreads around school the next day. You can see the horror on his face when he realises he's killing things and doesn't even know he's doing it. There's this scene in a school bathroom where Henry has a vision. He sees Patty, but she's not really Patty. She's a puppet of the shadow, this twisted version of the girl he's starting to care about. Puppet Patty taunts him, tells him about the future killings he'll commit, urges him to hurt people. It's genuinely disturbing, and Henry is absolutely terrified. He doesn't want this. He begs the presence to leave him alone. His relationship with his family is complicated. Victor, his father, wants to believe everything is fine. He's a veteran, probably dealing with his own trauma from the war, and he's chosen denial as his coping mechanism. He loves Henry, you can tell, but he can't face what his son actually is. Virginia, Henry's mother, is different. She's watchful, anxious, and as we find out later, she's got her own trauma. Her father was abusive, used to lock her in closets full of spiders as punishment. That terror has never left her, and Henry can sense it. Later in the play, he weaponizes it against her in one of the most disturbing scenes. Alice, his little sister, is just trying to have a normal family. She loves her brother, looks up to him, doesn't understand why everyone is so tense all the time. The tragedy of Alice is that she's completely innocent, and she doesn't survive the play. What makes Henry so compelling here is that he genuinely wants to be good. When he meets Patty, and she doesn't run away from him, when she actually listens and believes him when he says his powers scare him, you can see how desperate he is for that connection. He creates this beautiful vision for her once, using his abilities to show her singing on stage with everyone supporting her. It's the most hopeful moment in the entire play. He's using his powers for something kind, something loving. You start to think maybe he can be saved. But there's this constant undercurrent of dread because we know how this ends. We know Henry becomes Vecna. We know he murders his mother and sister. We know he eventually embraces the darkness and becomes one of the most terrifying villains in the series. Watching him struggle against that fate, watching him try so hard to be normal, makes it all the more tragic when he fails. The Nevada incident haunts him. Before the Creels moved to Hawkins, Henry was playing in a cave and he found this stolen technology that had been hidden there. It activated, transported him to Dimension X, and he spent 12 hours there as a little kid, surrounded by creatures and darkness. When he came back, he wasn't the same. The Mind Flayer came back with him, or maybe he absorbed something from that dimension. The play never quite makes it clear if the Mind Flayer possessed him in that moment, or if it was already there waiting. Either way, those 12 hours changed everything. The question the play asks over and over is this: is Henry Creel evil, or is he a victim? And the answer the play gives is both. He's a boy who wanted to be good, who was given powers he never asked for, who was targeted by a malevolent force beyond his understanding. But he's also someone who makes choices, who gives in to anger and fear, who eventually stops fighting. The tragedy is that it didn't have to be this way, but once the wheels are in motion, there's no stopping what's coming. Of course, Henry's story wouldn't be complete without talking about the one person who believed he could be saved. Patty Newbie doesn't exist in the Netflix series, which makes her one of the most fascinating additions to the Stranger Things universe. She's entirely new, created specifically for this play, and yet she becomes absolutely central to understanding Henry's story. Patty is the adoptive daughter of Principal Newbie, Bob's father. Right from the start, we learn she's the girl from nowhere, someone with a mysterious past that even she doesn't fully understand. She knows she's adopted, knows her father resents her presence, and knows she doesn't quite fit in anywhere. She's got this stack of comic books she carries around, and she's tough in a way that suggests she's had to be. When Henry first arrives at Hawkins High, and that bully starts pushing him around, Patty is the one who steps in. She doesn't know Henry, has no reason to defend him, but she does it anyway. Maybe she recognises another outsider. Maybe she's just that kind of person. Either way, that moment of kindness is what starts everything between them. They bond over comic books first, which is lovely. They're both reading the same ones, both fascinated by stories of people with powers who have to hide what they are. They start meeting after school, just talking, and you can see Henry relaxing for the first time. He's found someone who doesn't look at him like he's dangerous or broken. Patty is brilliant in ways the play takes time to show. She's perceptive, sees through people's pretenses, and she's got this fierce loyalty once she decides someone is worth her time. When Henry starts to open up about his abilities, about the things he can do that scare him, Patty doesn't run. She tells him his powers aren't evil. She tells him he can control them, that he can use them for good. She believes in him in a way no one else does, not even his own family. Joyce eventually casts them both in the school play, Dark of the Moon. It's a story about a witch boy who falls in love with a human girl and has to give up his powers to be with her. The symbolism isn't exactly subtle, but it works. Patty plays the female lead and Henry plays her witch boy counterpart. They become lovers on stage before they've even properly kissed in real life. Their romance develops slowly, carefully. Henry creates this vision for Patty once, uses his powers to show her performing on stage, singing her heart out with everyone cheering for her. It's the most beautiful use of his abilities we see in the play. He's giving her this moment of pure joy, showing her what she could be, what she deserves, and you can see how much it means to her. She kisses him after that, tells him she's never felt seen like this before. But then comes the moment that changes everything. Patty wants to find her biological mother, and she asks Henry to help her. She's heard he can do things, see things, and she's desperate to know where she came from. Henry agrees because he'd do anything for her at this point. They go up to the Creel house attic, and Henry blindfolds himself, takes Patty's hand, and enters the void. They find her mother. She's a singer at the Stardust Casino in Las Vegas, performing on stage, beautiful and alive. For a moment, it's everything Patty hoped for. But then the Mind Flayer notices what Henry's doing. The shadow takes over the vision, and Patty's mother starts speaking directly to Henry in this distorted voice. The Mind Flayer is using her image to taunt him, to push him further into darkness. Principal Newbie, Patty's father, walks in at exactly the wrong moment. He sees his daughter and this boy in some kind of trance, and he tries to intervene. That's when Henry loses control completely. The Mind Flayer takes over, and Henry's powers lash out. Principal Newbie is blinded, his eyes destroyed, and he's left seriously injured on the floor. Patty manages to break through to Henry in that moment. She tells him she believes he's good, tells him she loves him, begs him to say it back. And finally, Henry does. He tells her he loves her too. That love, that connection, is enough to give him just enough control to stop. Principal Newbie survives, barely, but he's blinded for life. This is the moment where everything starts to unravel. Joyce, Hopper and Bob were downstairs investigating strange radio signals coming from the Creel house. They witnessed the aftermath, see the injured principal, and immediately jump to the conclusion that creepy Victor Creel is responsible. They don't know about Henry's powers. They don't know what really happened. Their investigation leads directly to Victor being blamed for everything that comes next. The final tragedy comes during the school play itself. Henry and Patty reunite in the rafters above the stage while the performance is happening below. Brenner appears and tells Henry that Patty is his weakness, that he'll never be what he's meant to be as long as he cares about her. As Henry struggles between his love for Patty and the darkness pulling at him, as Patty tells him about finding her mother in Vegas, the Mind Flayer takes over one last time. Henry throws Patty from the rafters. She survives, thankfully. She's badly injured, hospitalized, but she lives. And according to what we learn later, she eventually makes her way to Las Vegas, finds her mother, and builds a life there. But her relationship with Henry ends in that moment of violence, and there's something absolutely devastating about that. She loved him, believed in him, and it still wasn't enough to save him. While Henry and Patty's tragedy unfolds, there's another story happening right alongside it. One of the best parts of the first Shadow is watching teenage Joyce, Hopper, and Bob stumble through what is essentially their first encounter with the supernatural, except they have no idea that's what it is. They think they are investigating a serial pet killer. They have absolutely no clue they're dealing with an interdimensional monster possessing a psychic teenager. Joyce Maldonado at 17 is almost unrecognisable compared to the exhausted, frantic mother we meet in the series. This Joyce is peppy, maybe even a bit annoying in how aggressively optimistic she is. She talks fast, moves fast, has about 17 different projects going at once. Her big dream is to direct a play good enough to earn her a scholarship to a college in Indianapolis. Not New York, not Los Angeles, Indianapolis. That's how desperate she is to escape Hawkins. She's already dating Lonnie Byers, and the play doesn't shy away from showing us why that's a terrible idea. He's dismissive of her ambitions, makes fun of her passion for theatre, treats her like she's being dramatic when she gets excited about things. But Joyce doesn't see it yet. She thinks his rough edges are interesting, thinks she can handle him. We know how that turns out. What's lovely is watching her direct the school play. Joyce originally wanted to do Oklahoma, which is very safe and traditional, but she scraps it for Dark of the Moon, this much darker, weirder story. When she's given pushback, she fights for it, with everything she has. You can see the seeds of the Joyce who will tear apart dimensions to find her son. That fierce, protective energy is already there, just aimed at her art instead of her family. Jim Hopper is 18 and absolutely miserable. His car won't start, which becomes this running joke throughout the play. He's constantly trying to fix it, because that car represents freedom, represents getting out of Hawkins and away from his father. Chief Hopper, Jim's dad, is this looming presence of expectation and disappointment. He fought in the war, came back with trauma he won't acknowledge, and expects his son to be disciplined and responsible and everything Jim doesn't want to be. There's this lovely dynamic between Hopper and Bob that mirrors Steve and Dustin in the main series. They're friends in this sweet, uncomplicated way. Hopper is the cooler one, the one who takes risks and breaks rules, while Bob is the nerdy guy who builds gadgets and gets excited about radio frequencies. But there's genuine affection there. When they team up to investigate the animal deaths, you can see how well they work together. The love triangle situation is handled really gently. Hopper clearly likes Joyce, and Joyce clearly likes him back, but neither of them will admit it. They flirt through insults and arguments, which anyone who's watched the main series will find very familiar. Bob, meanwhile, is desperately in love with Joyce, and absolutely terrible at hiding it. He does everything he can to impress her, builds her devices, helps with her play, and she just sees him as a sweet friend. It's painful to watch, because we know Bob eventually does get his chance with Joyce in Season 2, but it's also clear that this isn't his time. Bob's real contribution is his technical brilliance. He builds this mobile radio location device that can track interference patterns and electromagnetic anomalies. It's cobbled together from spare parts and shouldn't work as well as it does, but Bob is genuinely gifted at this stuff. When pets start dying around Hawkins, Bob notices that each death corresponds with radio interference, with his broadcasts getting disrupted at specific times. He starts mapping the patterns, photographing the crime scenes, treating it like a proper investigation. Joyce joins, because she's curious and because several of the victims are kids in her play. Hopper gets pulled in partly to help and partly because being around Joyce and Bob is more interesting than dealing with his father. The three of them become this little detective trio, sneaking around Hawkins after dark, following Bob's device to wherever the signals are strongest. The animal deaths are genuinely disturbing. Claudia Henderson's cat Prancer is found mutilated, someone's dog is killed, and left in a really horrible state. Each victim belongs to someone involved in Joyce's production of Dark of the Moon, which creates this pattern that the trio latches onto. They're convinced there's a human killer targeting the play for some reason. The idea that it might be something supernatural, that one of their classmates might be responsible, never even crosses their minds. There's this brilliant scene where Bob installs Christmas lights in his tracking device, using them to indicate signal strength. It's such a clear callback to season 1 where Joyce uses Christmas lights to communicate with Will in the Upside Down. The play is full of those little moments where you see the origins of things that become important later. The investigation eventually leads them to the Creel house. Bob's device is going absolutely mad with interference, and the three of them sneak onto the property one night to investigate. They're downstairs when the incident with Principal Newbie happens upstairs. They hear the commotion, hear the screams, and when they rush up, they find Newbie blinded and bleeding on the floor. Henry and Patty are there, both of them in shock, and Victor Creel comes running in from another room. In that moment of chaos and terror, Joyce, Bob, and Hopper make a decision that changes everything. They run, they flee the house and immediately go to the police with their theory. Victor Creel, the weird veteran who just moved to town, is the killer. He's been murdering animals as practice, and now he's escalated to attacking people. It makes sense based on what they saw. Victor was there, covered in blood from trying to help his injured neighbour. Henry looked traumatised because he just witnessed his father's violence. Or so they think. They don't know they've just set up an innocent man to take the fall for his son's crimes. They don't know that their investigation, their desire to solve this mystery and be heroes, is going to contribute to one of the great tragedies in Hawkins' history. It's heartbreaking, because their intentions are good. They're trying to help. They're trying to protect people. The chemistry between the three of them really sells the idea that these are the same people who become the adults we know. You can see future Joyce in the way this girl fights for what matters to her. You can see future Hopper in the way this boy can't stand injustice, even when it's easier to look away. And you can see future Bob in the way this kid just wants to help the people he loves, even if they don't love him back the same way. There's one more player in this story, though, and he's the one pulling the strings on everything. Dr. Martin Brenner is the villain of the first Shadow. Full stop. Not Henry, not the Mind Flayer. Brenner. He's the one who sees a traumatized, frightened child and decides that child is a tool to be exploited. He's the one who manipulates everyone around him to get what he wants. And what he wants is to become God. That's not hyperbole. That's literally his goal. Brenner enters the story after Principal Newbie is blinded. Word gets back to some mysterious government contact that something impossible happened in Hawkins, that a man's eyes were destroyed by an unseen force. Brenner arrives to investigate, and the moment he meets Henry, you can see the calculation happening behind his eyes. This is what he's been searching for his entire life. See? Brenner grew up with his father's deathbed confession ringing in his ears. His father was the captain of the USS Eldridge, the only survivor of that 1943 experiment that opened a portal to Dimension X. He came back broken, physically and mentally, with this unique blood type and stories about another world filled with creatures and impossible darkness. The elder Brenner spent the rest of his life trying to warn people, trying to explain what he'd seen, and no one believed him. But his son Martin believed. Martin Brenner becomes obsessed. He dedicates his life to recreating what happened on the Eldridge, to proving his father wasn't mad, to finding a way to control the portal. He establishes something called the Nevada experiment, recruiting scientists and securing funding to replicate the conditions that opened the rift. But there's a problem. One of his fellow scientists defects, steals the key technology, and hides it in a cave system in the Nevada desert. Here's where it all connects. Young Henry Creel and his family were living in Rachel, Nevada, near those caves. Henry was just a little kid, maybe 6 or 7, playing with a spyglass and exploring where he shouldn't be. He stumbled across the stolen technology and it activated. The portal opened and Henry was pulled through to Dimension X for 12 hours. 12 hours. A little boy, alone in that nightmare dimension with the mind flayer and God knows what else. When Henry came back, he wasn't the same. He had powers. He had this connection to the other side that wouldn't break. And he had the mind flayer's presence inside him, or attached to him, or watching him. The play never quite makes it clear which, but the result is the same. Brenner has been tracking Henry ever since. He knows about Nevada. He knows about the boy who survived Dimension X. When Henry's powers manifest and cause the incident with Principal Newbie, Brenner swoops in like a predator who's finally cornered his prey. What makes Brenner so disturbing in the play is how paternal he acts. He presents himself as a father figure, someone who understands Henry in a way his real parents never could. He tells Henry that his powers are a gift, that he's the next step in human evolution, that together they can unlock the secrets of the universe. He's grooming this traumatized teenager, and he's good at it. Virginia Creel becomes Brenner's unwitting accomplice. He approaches her separately, plays on her fears about her son, and offers her medication to help her cope with the stress. What Virginia doesn't know is that Brenner has drugged her, used some kind of truth serum or psychotropic, and extracted every piece of information she has about Henry. His abilities, his episodes, his fears, the incident in Nevada, all of it. Virginia thinks she's protecting her son by talking to this kind doctor. In reality, she's giving Brenner the ammunition he needs to manipulate Henry completely. There's this scene in Hawkins National Laboratory where Brenner lays it all out for Henry. He explains the USS Eldridge, his father's survival, the Nevada experiment, the stolen technology. He tells Henry that the 12 missing hours in the cave weren't an accident, they were destiny. Henry was meant to be the bridge between worlds, the key to unlocking something magnificent. Brenner talks about evolution, about becoming gods, about taking control of forces that humanity has feared since the beginning of time. And Henry, desperate and scared, and so tired of fighting, starts to listen. Brenner is offering him something no one else has. Acceptance, not despite his powers, but because of them. Brenner tells him he doesn't need to be normal. Normal is weakness, what Henry has is strength, and Brenner can teach him to use it. The manipulation is absolutely chilling because it works. By the time Brenner is done, Henry has gone from wanting to suppress his abilities to seeing them as his birthright. The play shows you exactly how a monster is made, and it's not through inherent evil. It's through a wounded person being told their wounds make them special. The final confrontation between Brenner and Henry happens during the school play. Brenner has tracked Henry down, shows up during the performance of Dark of the Moon, and makes his move. He tells Henry that Patty is his weakness, that as long as he cares about her, he'll never achieve his potential. He offers Henry a choice. Come to the laboratory voluntarily and help with the work, or Brenner will make sure everyone Henry loves suffers. When Henry loses control and throws Patty from the rafters, Brenner gets exactly what he wants. Henry, broken and horrified by what he's done, surrenders. He agrees to go with Brenner, to become part of the program at Hawkins' lab. And that's how it starts. That's how the program that eventually creates 11 begins. Brenner is the architect of everything. He set up the conditions, manipulated the players, and turned a frightened boy into the weapon he always wanted. The Mind Flayer might be the cosmic horror, but Brenner is the human one. Now let me walk you through how all these pieces come together in the climax. The play builds and builds, every scene adding another layer of dread. You know where it's headed. You know it ends in blood and madness, but watching these kids try so hard to be normal, watching them fail, makes it so much worse. After the incident where Principal Newbie is blinded, Henry is taken to see Dr. Brenner. Virginia has arranged it, thinking she's getting help for her son. Instead, she's delivered him directly into Brenner's hands. Henry finds out about his mother's betrayal, how she's been giving away his secrets to this man. Something breaks in him. He goes home and confronts Virginia. She tries to explain, tells him she was scared. She was trying to protect the family. Henry doesn't want to hear it. He knows about her trauma, about how her father locked her in closets full of spiders. He's known for years, sensed it in her nightmares, and he uses it against her. The scene is deeply disturbing. Henry traps Virginia in her own memories, forces her to relive the worst moments of her childhood while spiders crawl over everything. She's screaming, begging him to stop, and he can't or won't. The mind flayer is there, feeding on her terror, and Henry just lets it happen. When it's over, Virginia is dead. Little Alice comes upstairs. She's heard the noise, is calling for her mother. Henry looks at his sister, this innocent kid who loves him despite everything, and for a moment you think he might stop. But the mind flayer won't let him. Alice dies too, quickly, almost mercifully compared to Virginia. Henry stages it to look like Victor did it, leaves evidence, plants suggestions. When Victor wakes up the next morning, he finds his wife and daughter dead, his son missing, and the police already suspecting him based on Joyce, Bob, and Hopper's earlier report about the animal killings. The play jumps forward. It's opening night. For Dark of the Moon. The cast is backstage, nervous and excited. Joyce is running around with last-minute notes. The audience is filing in. This is the big night, the performance that's supposed to earn Joyce her scholarship and give everyone a chance to escape their small-town lives for a few hours. Henry appears in the rafters above the stage. He shouldn't be there. Everyone thinks he's left town after the Creel murders, but he's come back for Patty. The performance begins below. The actors go through their lines. Joyce watches from the wings, proud and anxious. And above it all, Henry and Patty reunite in the shadows. Patty is torn between relief that he's alive and horror at what she suspects he's done. Henry tries to explain, tells her about finding her mother, about the vision, about Las Vegas and the Stardust Casino. He wants her to know that even in his darkest moment, he was thinking of her, trying to give her what she wanted. That's when Brenner appears on the opposite side of the stage. It's brilliant staging. Brenner on one side, Patty on the other, and Henry in the middle, literally caught between them. Brenner tells him it's time to come to the laboratory, time to embrace what he is, time to stop pretending he can be normal. Patty begs him not to listen, tells him he can still choose to be good. The play happening below reaches its climax. The witch boy is torn between two worlds. The audience is watching the stage, unaware of the real drama unfolding in the rafters above them. Henry loses control one final time. The mind flayer surges forward, and Patty is thrown from the rafters. She falls, hits the stage below, and the play stops. Chaos erupts. People screaming, rushing to help. Patty is alive, but badly hurt. And Henry, seeing what he's done to the one person who believed in him, surrenders. He goes with Brenner willingly. What else is there? The epilogue shows us how the pieces fall into place. Victor Creel is arrested for the murders of Virginia and Alice. The evidence is circumstantial but damning. He was there in the house when it happened. His story doesn't make sense, and the jury doesn't believe him. He's found guilty and committed to a psychiatric institution where he'll spend the rest of his life insisting he's innocent. No one believes him. Joyce, Bob, and Hopper feel like heroes for a brief moment. They helped solve the case, provided crucial testimony about Victor's strange behaviour and the animal killings. But there's this nagging guilt underneath, especially for Joyce. She can't shake the feeling that something doesn't add up. But she's 18, about to graduate, and her play earned her that scholarship to Indianapolis. She's getting out. That's what matters. Patty survives her injuries. She's hospitalised for weeks, but she recovers. Principal Newbie, her father, is blind now, permanently disabled by what happened. There's a quiet scene between them where he draws something for her on a piece of paper. It's the mind flayer, the shadow creature he saw in that moment when Henry's powers took over. He tells Patty he understands now. Henry didn't hurt him on purpose. Something else did. Something that was using the boy. Patty eventually makes her way to Las Vegas. The play implies she finds her mother, builds a life there, away from Hawkins and all its darkness. Whether she ever forgives Henry, or whether she spends the rest of her life trying to forget him, we don't know. But she survives, which is more than most people touched by Henry Creel can say. The play jumps forward to 1963, 4 years later. We're back at Hawkins High School, or maybe it's the train station. Joyce and Hopper are saying goodbye. Hopper is in his army uniform, shipping off to Vietnam. The war is escalating and he's been drafted. There's this moment between them where all the things they never said hang in the air. Joyce is still with Lonnie, still making that mistake. Hopper is trying to be brave about going to war. They hug, and it's clear they both wish things were different. Bob is there too, still carrying a torch for Joyce, still being supportive, even though she doesn't see him that way. It's a bittersweet scene. These three kids who investigated a mystery together, who thought they were doing the right thing, are going their separate ways. They don't know yet that they'll all end up back in Hawkins eventually, that their paths will cross again when another boy goes missing in 1983. Then comes the final scene. And it's absolutely gutting. We're in Hawkins National Laboratory years later. The exact timeline isn't specified, but it's been long enough for Brenner's program to be fully operational. The stage is cold and clinical, all white walls and fluorescent lights. There are children here, test subjects, kids with numbers tattooed on their wrists. Henry is older now, maybe in his 20s. He's working with Brenner, assisting with the experiments. He's restrained somehow, either physically or through some kind of control Brenner has over him. But he's cooperating. He's part of the program. A little girl is brought into the room. She can't be more than 8 or 9 years old. She's got dark hair and these huge, frightened eyes. She's holding a toy, clutching it like it's the only thing keeping her grounded. Henry kneels down to her level. His voice is gentle, almost kind. He introduces himself, tells her his name, tells her he's there to help her, to teach her how to use her gifts. She looks up at him with trust, because what else is a scared child going to do? Henry takes her hand. The lights shift. A shadow appears on the back wall, projected huge. It's Vecna, the creature Henry will become, skeletal and monstrous, holding the hand of a small child. The image is stark and horrible and inevitable. The little girl is 11. The lights cut to black. That's how the first shadow ends, with the confirmation that everything we've just witnessed, all this tragedy and manipulation and loss, was the beginning of the story we already know. Henry's journey from frightened boy to monster is complete. Brenner has his weapon, and 11, the girl who will eventually be the one to stop Vecna, is just starting her nightmare. It's a devastating final image. The play comes full circle, connecting directly to the opening moments of the Netflix series where we first meet 11 in the lab. Now we know how she got there. Now we know what Henry became before she ever met him. So let's talk about what this play is actually saying beneath all the supernatural horror. The biggest theme running through the entire story is nature versus nurture. Is Henry Creel born evil, or is he made evil? And the answer is complicated, which is exactly right. Henry is born with powers, yes. He has this connection to Dimension X that happened when he was just a little kid. But the powers themselves aren't evil. We see him use them to create beauty, to give Patty that vision where she's singing and happy. We see him desperate to control them, to be good. What corrupts Henry isn't the powers. It's the Mind Flayer's influence combined with Brenner's manipulation, combined with his family's trauma, combined with a society that gives him no support. It's layers upon layers of damage. By the end, when he's killed his mother and sister, when he's thrown Patty from the rafters, you can't point to one single thing and say that's what made him a monster. It's everything. It's the accumulation of 1,000 small failures and one massive supernatural presence that won't let him go. The play is really interested in how trauma gets passed down through generations. Victor Creel came back from war carrying things he won't talk about. That manifests as emotional distance, as denial, as an inability to face what's happening to his son. Virginia grew up with an abusive father who locked her in closets full of spiders, and she carries that terror into her parenting. She's so afraid all the time that she can't see clearly, can't make good decisions, ends up being manipulated by Brenner because she's desperate for someone to tell her everything will be okay. Hopper's dad is the same. Chief Hopper fought in the war, came back broken, and now he's putting all that unprocessed trauma onto his son in the form of impossible expectations. These men went through something horrible and don't have the tools to deal with it, so it leaks out sideways and hurts the people they love. The play doesn't excuse it, but it does show you how the cycle works. Love as potential salvation is huge in this story. Patty genuinely believes she can save Henry, and for a while, it almost works. When she tells him she loves him, when she sees him as good despite his powers, Henry fights harder than he's ever fought to maintain control. That moment where she's begging him to say it back, and he does, and it breaks the Mind Flayer's hold just long enough to save Principal Newbie's life, that's proof that love has power here. But here's the tragedy. Love isn't enough on its own. It can't overcome a cosmic force like the Mind Flayer. It can't undo Brenner's manipulation or erase Henry's trauma or give him the support structure he'd need to truly heal. Patty's love gives Henry moments of light, but it can't save him in the end. That's heartbreaking because we want to believe love conquers all, and this play says sometimes it just doesn't. The manipulation and control theme runs through everything Brenner does. He's grooming Henry from the moment they meet using classic abuse tactics. He isolates him, tells him no one else understands him, offers himself as the only person who truly sees Henry's potential. He love bombs him with talk of evolution and destiny. And when Henry is at his lowest, when he's just killed his family and has nothing left, Brenner swoops in and offers structure and purpose. There's this running question about incomplete information and how it leads to injustice. Joyce, Bob, and Hopper see part of the picture. They know someone is killing animals. They know Principal Newbie was attacked. They know the Creels are strange and Victor gives them bad vibes. Based on what they can see, their conclusion makes sense. Victor must be the killer. They testify, and an innocent man spends the rest of his life in an asylum. The play doesn't blame them for this exactly. They're teenagers trying to do the right thing with limited information. But it shows you the cost of jumping to conclusions, of not asking deeper questions, of being so certain you're right that you don't look for other explanations. Now let's talk about how all of this connects to Season 5, because this is where it gets really interesting. Season 5, Volume 1 dropped in November 2025, and the play connections started showing up immediately. If you've seen the first Shadow, there are moments in these first 4 episodes that hit completely differently. Episode 4 is where it gets explicit. Max, who's trapped inside Vecna's mindscape after the events of Season 4, finds herself wandering through different memories and locations. At one point, she steps through a doorway and ends up in Hawkins High School in 1959. The hallways look different, older, and there are students rushing past in period-appropriate clothing. Max spots a poster on the wall advertising a one-night-only performance of a school play on November 6th, 1959. The poster lists the cast. Henry Creel is playing the male lead. Joyce Maldonado is directing. Other names appear too, characters we know from the play. If you haven't seen the first Shadow, this moment is just a cool Easter egg, a glimpse into the past. But if you know the play, you understand that Max is seeing the night everything went wrong. The night of the climactic performance when Henry threw Patty from the rafters and surrendered to Brenner. November 6th is significant for another reason. That's the date Will Byers vanished in 1983, the very first episode of Stranger Things. The Duffers love their parallel dates, and connecting Henry's fall to Will's disappearance feels very deliberate. Later in that same episode, there's a sequence where Holly Wheeler is trapped in Vecna's mind, and she ends up in a cave. It's dark, filled with strange technology that looks decades old, and the location is clearly Nevada desert rather than Indiana. Holly can sense that Vecna is afraid of this place, that he won't enter it. She uses that to hide from him. The first Shadow explains exactly why. This is the cave from Henry's childhood, the place where he found the stolen technology and was pulled into Dimension X for 12 hours. It's the site of his original trauma, the moment when everything changed for him. The play spends significant time on this backstory, showing us young Henry playing with a spyglass, exploring where he shouldn't, activating something he doesn't understand. That cave represents the death of Henry's innocence. In the show, we're just told it's a cave Vecna fears. In the play, we understand why. We've seen it happen. The emotional weight is completely different. Project Rainbow gets mentioned in Season 5 as well, though not extensively in Volume 1. Characters reference it as this mysterious government experiment tied to Brenner and the origins of Hawkins' lab. The first Shadow dedicates an entire scene to explaining what Project Rainbow was. how it connects to the USS Eldridge experiment in 1943, and how Brenner spent his entire career trying to recreate his father's accidental portal. It's the foundation of everything Brenner does in the series. There's this moment in episode 2 where someone mentions Nevada in passing, just a quick reference to government experiments in the desert. If you know the play, your ears perk up because you know exactly what Nevada experiment they're talking about and how Henry Creel was the accidental test subject. Patty hasn't appeared in Season 5 yet, at least not in Volume 1, but there are hints. Someone mentions Las Vegas. Someone else references old government files from the late 1950s. The Duffers have confirmed that Kate Treffray, who wrote the play, also wrote Episode 6, which is titled Escape from Camazotz. That's the episode in Volume 2, dropping on Christmas. Given that Treffray created Patty and wrote her entire arc, it would make sense for Patty to appear in the episode she wrote. The bigger revelation from the play that enriches Season 5 is the nature of the Mind Flayer. In the show, there's been this ongoing question about whether Vecna created the Mind Flayer or whether the Mind Flayer created Vecna. The first shadow makes it clear the Mind Flayer is the original entity. It found Henry when he was a child, latched onto him, and has been using him ever since. Henry didn't create it. He's its most powerful host, its puppet, its weapon. That reframes every single scene with Vecna, in Season 4 and now in Season 5. He's not the mastermind. He thinks he is, but he's being manipulated by something far older and more powerful. When characters in Season 5 talk about defeating Vecna, you wonder if that's even enough. The Mind Flayer is still out there. The play also explains why 11 exists. Brenner's entire program at Hawkins' lab is built on Henry's blood, the special abilities that Henry developed after his time in Dimension X. Brenner extracted that, studied it, and tried to replicate it in other children. 11 and all the other numbered kids are essentially lab-grown versions of Henry's powers. They're his children in a really disturbing way. There's a scene in the play's epilogue where older Henry meets young 11 for the first time. And now when you watch their scenes together in Season 4, you understand that history goes back further than we knew. He's been grooming her since she was tiny, teaching her, shaping her, and it's all under Brenner's direction. Now, everyone who sees the first shadow comes out talking about the same thing. How the hell did they do that? How did they put the Upside Down on a theatre stage? How did they make a Demogorgon appear? How did they show Henry flying and Patty falling, and the void with its red lasers without it looking cheap or silly? The answer is a combination of brilliant design work and absolutely insane technical ambition. The director treated this like a massive theatrical event rather than just a play based on a TV show. The set design creates this world that shifts between gritty 1950s realism and abstract supernatural horror. One moment you're in a high school gymnasium, the next you're in Dimension X, and the transitions are seamless. The void sequences are apparently stunning. They use a combination of projection mapping, laser effects, and clever staging, where Henry stands in a specific spot and the world transforms around him. The red lasers that represent the Mind Flayer's dimension cut through theatrical fog, creating these geometric patterns that feel genuinely otherworldly. It's not trying to exactly recreate what we see in the Netflix series. It's finding a theatrical language for those concepts. When Henry uses his powers to lift objects or people, they've got rigging systems hidden throughout the theatre. Patty's fall from the rafters is done with carefully choreographed wire work that happens so fast you don't have time to see the mechanics. You just see her drop, and the audience gasps every single time. The Demogorgon appearance in the prologue uses a combination of puppetry and actors in suits, similar to how creature work is done in shows like Warhorse or King Kong on Broadway. It's not on stage for long, maybe 30 seconds, but it's there long enough to establish that yes, we're dealing with actual monsters, not just metaphorical ones. The lighting design does so much heavy lifting. The shift from warm, nostalgic 1950s lighting to the cold fluorescence of the laboratory to the hellish red of the void, it all guides you emotionally through the story. There are moments where a single spotlight is the only thing on stage, focusing all your attention on Henry's face as he struggles for control. The sound design is where a lot of the horror lives. The Mind Flayer has this specific sound profile, this deep rumbling underlaid with whispers and clock chimes. When Henry slips into the void, you hear it before you see it. The audience knows what's coming and the dread builds. There are jump scares, proper horror film style scares, and apparently people scream. Fun fact, about 60% of the audience for the first Shadow on both the West End and Broadway are first-time theatre goers. Netflix fans who've never been to a play before, who don't know the etiquette, who eat popcorn during the performance and react like they're watching a movie. Some traditional theatre people were sniffy about it, but the director loves it. He said the audiences respond in a really natural way, gasping and cheering, and getting emotionally invested without that polite restraint you sometimes get in theatres. The play within a play staging for Dark of the Moon is clever because it mirrors what's happening with Henry and Patty's real story. You've got actors playing high school students who are playing characters in a play about a witch boy and his doomed love, while above them, the actual witch boy and his actual doomed love are having their final confrontation. It's this lovely meta thing that works way better than it should. So should you actually try to see this play? If you're in London or New York or can get there and theatre tickets are within your budget, then yeah, it's absolutely worth seeing. The production values alone make it a spectacle. The performances are strong, the story is emotionally resonant, and you get to experience something that genuinely enhances your understanding of Stranger Things. Tickets range from about £50 for upper balcony seats in London to over $300 for premium Broadway seats. There are rush tickets and lotteries available for both productions if you're willing to gamble a bit. For international fans or people who can't afford the trip or the ticket prices, there are other options. The Behind the Curtain documentary on Netflix gives you a solid sense of what the play is like, how it was made, and what the story contains. You don't get the full narrative, but you get enough to understand the scope and ambition. And honestly, this breakdown you just watched covers the complete plot in detail. The play isn't required viewing for Season 5. The Duffers have been very clear about that. Everything you need to know will be explained in the show itself. The play is supplementary, enriching, deepening, but not essential. That said, if you love theatre, if you're fascinated by stagecraft and practical effects, if you want to see how they pull off the impossible on a live stage 8 times a week, then it's worth seeking out. The experience of being in the theatre when Patty falls, when the Demogorgon appears, when Henry slips into the void, that's something you can't fully replicate or through description or documentary footage. So that's the complete story of Stranger Things, the first Shadow. We've covered everything from that 1943 prologue on the USS Eldridge all the way through to the moment Henry Creel meets young Eleven in Hawkins' lab. We've walked through Henry's tragedy, Patty's heartbreak, Brenner's manipulation, and how 3 well-meaning teenagers accidentally condemned an innocent man. We've seen how the Mind Flayer found its perfect host and how love, despite being powerful, wasn't quite enough to overcome cosmic horror and generational trauma. Season 5. Volume 2 drops on Christmas Day, December 25th, with 3 more episodes. The finale arrives on New Year's Eve. There's so much left to explore, so many mysteries still to unravel. I'll be here breaking it all down, making sense of the Upside Down, the Mind Flayer, and how this story finally ends. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you're subscribed because we've got tons more Stranger Things content coming your way. Drop a comment below with your thoughts about the play or Season 5. I'd love to hear what you think. Until next time, stay safe and thanks for watching.